When a man hurts a good woman, here's what follows. There comes a time in life when truth no longer hides behind silence, when pain finally finds its voice. And today, we need to talk about something real. Something that happens too often, too quietly. When a man hurts a good woman, he doesn't just break her heart. He alters the rhythm of her spirit. You see, a good woman loves deeply. She gives from places inside her that even she didn't know existed. She supports, she sacrifices, she believes in the man she loves, even when he stops believing in himself. So when he hurts her, whether through betrayal, neglect, lies, or emotional coldness, it's not just love that's lost. It's trust, it's safety, it's the quiet dignity of knowing someone has your back. But let me tell you what follows. She falls, but she doesn't shatter, she cries. But those tears are cleansing. She breaks, but not forever. Because a good woman is not made of glass. She is made of fire, of storm, of deep waters and rising tides. At first, she might blame herself. That's what good women do. They wonder what more they could have done, how they could have loved better, tried harder. But then one day, she stops. She stands up, looks in the mirror, and remembers who she is. And that's the moment everything changes. Because when a good woman is hurt and survives it, she becomes wiser, stronger, softer in the right places, harder in the necessary ones. She learns to guard her heart, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. She no longer begs to be chosen. She chooses herself and the man. He often realizes too late that he lost more than just a woman. He lost a safe place, a teammate, a soul that wanted to build with him, not just exist beside him. But life goes on, and the beautiful twist in this story. The good woman rises, with grace, with power. She glows differently, because now her love is no longer poured into someone who cannot hold it. So to every woman who has been hurt, you are not broken, you are becoming. And to every man who ever had the love of a good woman, honor her, cherish her, because when she walks away, she doesn't come back the same. When a good woman is wounded by the very person she once trusted most, the pain slices through every layer of her being with a precision that startles even her. It is no surface scratch she can simply bandage over. It is a soul, deep ache that reverberates through memories, expectations, and hopes alike. In the stillness of those first hours, she feels as though the life she had so carefully nurtured has been violently uprooted. Friends might see only tears or brief silences, but inside her chest the damage feels catastrophic, like living glass shattered in slow motion. Yet here lies the quiet paradox that outsiders often miss. Although the hurt is indeed profound, an earthquake at the deepest fault line of her heart, it is not, and never will be, fatal to her spirit. At first, the magnitude of what has happened overwhelms her every waking moment. Morning sunlight that once felt warm now casts long accusing shadows. Routine comforts, a favorite mug, the softness of worn pajamas, the smell of fresh coffee, seem to mock her, each one whispering that life is supposed to feel safe and predictable. She scrolls through old text messages, searching for the moment things cracked, analyzing every emoji, every stray punctuation mark, as if forensic precision could reverse the betrayal. Nights stretch out like deserts, and sleep, when it comes, is fitful, fractured by jolts of memory that catapult her into awareness just as her body begins to surrender to rest. The very physiology of her grief is relentless. Tightness in the throat, a hollow that settles behind the sternum, breath that seems to snag on invisible barbs. But here is where her story diverges from the narrative of permanent devastation. Within the labyrinth of anguish, tiny glimmers of resilience begin to emerge. They are infinitesimal at first, a quickened heartbeat when she remembers an old accomplishment, an involuntary smile at a silly meme, a sudden hunger for something delicious. Each spark is a small rebellion against the darkness, proof that her life force is stubbornly intact. Though she may not recognize it yet, her heart is practicing survival in micro movements, like a sprained muscle quietly regaining strength beneath a cast. Often, the turning point comes in the most ordinary of moments, pushing a grocery cart past the produce aisle, hearing a song in the car that once made her dance, or catching her own reflection in a shop window and realizing that her eyes still hold an undeniable fire. The realization may arrive as a gentle epiphany rather than a thunderclap, but its impact is seismic. Grief has not erased her. It has clarified her contours. She can track the outline of her own endurance as surely as a mountain ridge against the dawn. The woman who once poured out unconditional love like an ever-flowing river has not run dry. She has simply discovered that rivers can change course, carving new canyons through the bedrock instead of flooding the same plain. Crucially, the hurt begins to metamorphose when she gives herself permission to name it without self-blame. It is common for a caring woman to scrutinize herself far more harshly than she scrutinizes the man who harmed her. She inventories perceived shortcomings, replays conversations, and wonders if a different version of herself might have prevented the outcome. Yet, over time, compassion threads its way into her inner dialogue. She starts speaking to herself in the steady, encouraging tone she once reserved for others, acknowledging not only the injury, but also her heroic effort to love in the first place. This self-compassion does not erase the wrong nor excuse it. Instead, it becomes a soft place on which her restored strength can land. What outsiders call moving on is no simple forward march. It is a spiral staircase she climbs day by day, revisiting pain from higher vantage points until the sting dulls and the lessons remain. She learns to differentiate between vulnerability and exposure, discovering that she can keep her heart open without making it a target. She refines her boundaries the way an architect refines a blueprint, no longer seeing limits as walls that imprison, but as doors that require the right key. Along the way, she reconnects with pieces of herself that may have been dormant. Her artistry, her ambition, her appetite for adventure. Each rediscovered passion acts like salve on invisible bruises, proof that her identity is vast enough to survive a fracture. And what of the woman's relationship to hope? Remarkably, hope is not extinguished by betrayal. It is re-engineered. She no longer hopes for someone else to complete her, but for complete alignment within herself. She hopes for love that is not merely received, but also reflected back with equal sincerity. Her standards rise organically, not out of bitterness, but out of an awakened understanding of her own worth. She internalizes the truth that loyalty must be mutual, that tenderness must be coupled with accountability. With this sharpened discernment, she can extend grace without forfeiting her dignity. In the end, the story of a good woman who has been hurt is not a tragedy. It is an origin myth of her next, more luminous chapter. The heartbreak becomes compost for future joy, enriching the soil of her soul so that whatever grows next is deep-rooted, more fragrant, and fiercely alive. Yes, she has bled. Yes, she has sobbed into pillows and cursed the ceiling at 3 a.m. Yet every tear carried away debris that no longer served her, and every sob opened space in her lungs for a calmer, steadier breath. She is incontrovertibly altered. But the alteration reveals alloy beneath the gold, a strength forged in the hottest furnace. The man who wounded her may have believed he was shattering something delicate, but in truth he cracked open a geode, from the outside unremarkable, but inside, glittering with crystals grown patiently in pressure and darkness. Pain has reshaped her, but it has not destroyed her. It has drawn out her brilliance, proving once and for all that her spirit is not made of glass but of diamond. There comes a moment after heartbreak when everything that once felt certain begins to dissolve. A woman who has been good, loyal, giving, loving with her whole being, finds herself standing in the ruins of what she thought was real. It's a lonely place, not because she lacks people around her, but because the deepest betrayal always happens in silence, in those sacred corners of the heart where she had stored all her belief in love. And in that moment, she does what she's always done. She turns the pain inward. She blames herself. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I loved too hard. Maybe I expected too much. These are the thoughts that echo through her mind, not because they're true, but because she's conditioned to believe that being good means taking responsibility for everything, even the damage someone else caused. It's heartbreaking how many women, strong, capable, good women, go through this phase. They rewrite history in their minds, searching for clues, trying to find the fork in the road where they could have turned differently and avoided this heartache. She believes that if she had just loved better, been more patient, more understanding, more of this or less of that, maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't have hurt her. But there's a shift that happens, and it doesn't come with fanfare. It isn't loud or dramatic. It's subtle, almost imperceptible at first. Maybe it starts when she's brushing her hair and pauses to really look at herself in the mirror. Or maybe it's when she's telling a friend the same story she's told 5 times and suddenly hears her own words differently. She hears the strength it took to stay, the courage it took to forgive, the grace she showed in moments where others would have walked away, and in that pause she begins to remember. She remembers who she was before the hurt, before the doubts, before she twisted herself into someone smaller just to be loved by someone who never truly saw her, and that memory becomes a flicker of light in a very dark tunnel. It's not yet a flame, but it's enough to warm her. She realizes that she wasn't the problem. Her love wasn't too much. It was just misplaced. It was offered to someone who didn't know how to receive it, someone who saw love as a convenience rather than a commitment. That's when everything begins to change. She starts choosing herself, not as an act of defiance, but as a sacred decision. She chooses her peace over their chaos, her sanity over second guessing, her worth over waiting for someone to realize it. And with every small choice, leaving the text unread, declining the call, setting the boundary, she takes back her power. It's not easy. In fact, it's incredibly hard. Choosing herself often feels like abandoning a dream she held on to for too long. But deep down, she knows that this dream was hurting her more than healing her. People might not notice the transformation right away, but it's there. She stands a little taller. Her eyes hold a different kind of fire, not the fire of pain, but of knowing. Knowing who she is, knowing what she deserves, knowing that she will never again settle for halfway love or one-sided effort. Her laughter returns, but now it's fuller, more rooted. She no longer laughs to mask her pain or to keep the peace. She laughs because she's rediscovering joy on her terms. What's most beautiful is that she doesn't lose her softness. She's still the same loving woman, but now that love starts with herself. She doesn't harden into bitterness. She simply becomes wiser. She no longer tries to earn love by shrinking herself. She no longer performs emotional labor, hoping someone will finally reciprocate. She is done proving her worth to someone who is blind to it, and the world responds. People start noticing the glow, the peace in her silence, the strength in her stillness. She no longer needs validation because she's already given it to herself. She walks into rooms differently, not with arrogance, but with assurance. She's not looking for someone to choose her. She is the one doing the choosing, and if love comes again, and it often does, it will have to meet her where she stands. No more lowering her standards just to feel needed. No more bending over backwards to be seen. She will be loved in full or not at all. What began as heartbreak turns into a rebirth, a journey from confusion to clarity, from self-blame to self-love. She sees now that the man who hurt her did not define her story. He was only a chapter, and maybe not even a good one, but the story continues. And in this new chapter, she is both the author and the heroine. So yes, there was a time she begged to be chosen. She thought love meant endurance, meant holding on no matter how much it hurt. But now she knows better. Now she chooses herself, fiercely, consistently, completely, and that choice changes everything. There is a transformation that takes place within a good woman who has been deeply hurt. It does not happen overnight. It is not the kind of change that shouts or announces itself with bold declarations. It's quiet, gradual, almost invisible to the outside world. But inside her, everything is shifting. The pain that once consumed her starts to settle. The storm begins to pass, and in its wake, something stronger and more beautiful is born. She begins to rise, not as a woman untouched by hurt, but as a woman reshaped by it. The hurt changes her, but it does not harden her. That is the remarkable part. Though she has every reason to shut down, to become guarded, bitter, even vengeful, she doesn't. Instead, she lets the pain do something more powerful. She lets it teach her. Through the tears, the sleepless nights, and the ache of disappointment, she starts to gain clarity. She begins to see herself and the situation not through the eyes of a woman who failed, but through the eyes of a woman who endured, who gave love freely and honestly, and who survived. That survival becomes her strength. At first, it's simply about getting through the day, making it to work, taking care of herself, avoiding the spiral of what-ifs. But then something shifts. She starts waking up with a little more energy. She begins to laugh again. Really laugh. Not the hollow kind meant to convince others she's okay, but the kind that bubbles up from the gut. She reconnects with parts of herself that had been neglected. The creative side, the curious side, the side that dreams big and isn't afraid of her own power. She begins to make decisions from a place of wisdom. Where she once ignored the red flags, she now pauses and listens. Where she used to silence her intuition, she now honors it. That inner voice she once doubted has grown stronger, clearer. She knows what peace feels like now, and she's no longer willing to sacrifice it for someone who doesn't know how to love her right. She stops mistaking emotional chaos for passion. She stops romanticizing inconsistency. Instead, she seeks presence, stability, kindness, and she understands that boundaries aren't walls to keep love out. They're filters to let the right love in. She's not cold, not bitter. She's simply awake, and there's a softness to her that remains. A softness that says, I have been broken, but I am not bitter. She still loves deeply, but she no longer loves recklessly. Her love is not given out of desperation or fear of being alone. It's no longer a currency she uses to prove her worth. Her love is intentional, sacred, and powerful. She doesn't chase anyone, because she has learned that anyone who is meant for her will not need to be chased. They will stand beside her willingly, consistently, and wholeheartedly. The strength she carries now is rooted in truth, and that truth gives her a confidence that doesn't need to be loud or performative. It's quiet and unshakable. It shows up in the way she walks into a room, in the way she says no without guilt, in the way she refuses to shrink to make others comfortable. She has nothing to prove. She has already proven to herself that she can survive what tried to break her, and come out better for it. People around her begin to notice. They may not know the full story, but they can feel it. They see the difference in her eyes, in her energy. She radiates something different now, something grounded and deeply rooted. There's a wisdom in her smile, a calm in her voice, and when others ask how she got here, she doesn't need to recount every moment of heartbreak. She simply says, "I went through something, and I found myself on the other side." She understands now that pain is not her enemy. Pain, as devastating as it was, served as a guide. It showed her where she was betraying herself, where she was settling, where she was abandoning her own needs. The hurt became a mirror, reflecting all the places where healing was needed. And instead of avoiding the mirror, she faced it. That is where her real power came from. Not from pretending everything was fine, but from walking through the fire, eyes wide open. She no longer fears being alone, because she's come to enjoy her own company. She no longer begs for closure, because she's given herself all the closure she needs. She no longer waits for an apology to move on, because forgiveness is something she gave herself long before it was ever offered. The need for external validation fades, and in its place grows a quiet knowing, "I am enough." There's nothing more powerful than a woman who has turned her pain into wisdom. She walks lighter, loves smarter, and lives fuller. The very heartbreak that once threatened to destroy her has become the foundation of her strength, not because she wanted it, not because she deserved it, but because she chose to grow from it, and now she carries that strength with grace. Not to prove anything to the world, but to remind herself of who she is. A woman who was hurt, who healed, and who rose, wiser, stronger, and more radiant than ever before. There comes a time after all the tears have dried and the silence has settled in when the woman who was once hurt, deeply, profoundly hurt, begins to see the bigger picture. It doesn't come in one sudden moment of clarity. It unfolds gradually, like morning light creeping across the horizon after a long, dark night. She realizes that everything she went through, as painful as it was, didn't destroy her. In fact, it revealed something she had forgotten, her power. She remembers how she kept going, even on the days when it felt like her heart had stopped working properly. She remembers the courage it took to get out of bed, to smile at the world, to show up for her responsibilities while carrying a quiet storm inside. And with that remembering comes a quiet pride, not arrogance, not vengeance, but an unshakable awareness that she is more than what happened to her. She is more than who hurt her. She is more than the sadness that once took up space in her soul. She doesn't just survive the hurt, she grows from it, and that growth changes her, not into someone hard or distant, but into someone discerning, intuitive, and powerful in a way that doesn't seek attention. She no longer moves through life looking to be completed. She is already whole. She no longer looks for someone to save her. She knows she has always been her own rescue. When a good woman is hurt and heals, she becomes magnetic. Not because of how she looks or what she says, but because of the energy she carries. She has been to the edge of heartbreak and returned with wisdom in her bones. You can feel it in her presence. There's a calm in her that wasn't there before. She's no longer interested in convincing anyone of her worth. She no longer entertains love that makes her question her value. She walks away from confusion and mixed signals without second guessing herself, not because she's jaded, but because she respects her peace more than empty promises. The same woman who once questioned everything now moves with clarity. She doesn't waste time trying to change people. She's not here to fix broken hearts that refuse to heal themselves. She's not interested in being a savior, a second choice, or a secret. She knows she deserves to be seen, loved, and chosen, fully, without hesitation. And if that's not offered, she doesn't beg. She lets go. She also becomes a mirror to others. When people encounter her, they sense her strength, and it can be uncomfortable. Some may try to dim her light because they are not ready to face their own shadows. But others, those who are aligned with truth and depth, are drawn to her, not just for her beauty, but for her integrity, for the way she listens, for the way she sees through the noise. She becomes a reminder that softness and strength can live in the same heart, that you can be gentle and still know when to walk away. This new version of her is not built on bitterness. It is built on boundaries. She's not angry, she's aware. She's not guarded, she's selective. She still believes in love, but she no longer believes in sacrificing herself to keep it. She's done overgiving, over-explaining, overextending. She has learned that the right love doesn't need to be chased, it flows. It grows, it respects and honors, and until that love arrives, she is perfectly content nurturing her own joy. She starts living for herself again. She travels, she learns new things, she builds. She gives her time to people and passions that uplift her. And in doing so, she begins to shine in ways she never expected. The glow isn't for anyone else, it's for her. It's the glow of someone who found herself in the ashes and decided to rise, not because she had to, but because she deserved to. And one day, someone might come along, someone genuine, kind, and steady, and she'll recognize the difference. She'll feel safe in a way that doesn't require her to shrink. She'll be loved in a way that doesn't cost her peace. But the beautiful truth is, she'll be fine either way, because she is no longer waiting to be completed. She is no longer building her life around someone else's readiness. She is already living it, fully, freely, on her terms. What once looked like the end of her world was actually the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where she is no longer just a supporting role in someone else's story, but the main character in her own. A woman who was hurt, yes, but who turned that pain into purpose, who found her strength not in what she endured, but in how she transformed. A woman who now knows the greatest love she'll ever have is the one she gives to herself, and from that place everything else becomes possible.